Hello and welcome back to the Anti-Anxiety Podcast. I'm your host, Oliver, and our big question on this show is how can we overcome fear and negative emotions and become our most awesome and loving selves in the fastest time possible? Our guest today is Zack Alexander. He is a trauma-informed shamanic healer and shadow work coach who has made a career guiding people into the depths of their shadows and then back into their light. And Zack has gone by the tag ZA Energetics. It's what he goes by on Instagram, and is well known for speaking out against the fake spiritual community and informing people of the dangers of false prophets and hidden manipulators. Oh, excuse me. Oh my goodness. So Zack, thank you so much for coming, man. It's a bit of a mouthful, but I'm excited to have you here on the show, my man. Welcome.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that intro. It feels, yeah.
Yeah, man. Awesome. Let's crack it. So my first I got a list of questions here that I came up with, so we can kind of just jump into those, and then that'll spark, I'm sure, some interesting dialogue for the viewers. We'll just have a good time here today. So my first question for you is, since, watching you on Instagram, I know that you really don't like the guru complex, like when spiritual influencers or teachers kind of put themselves on a pedestal. So with that being said, what does it mean for you to be a shamanic healer and a shadow work coach? And how is that different? Tell me about that for you.
So it's actually interesting. So, all right. So just, this is probably the first time I'm saying this in a public space, and I was going to announce it on my Instagram over the next month, but I probably will be leaving shamanic healing, and it has nothing to do with being against shamanic healing, but I am trying to transition of a place of just purely being in a grounded presence, and kind of maybe even leave just for my own health and everything, maybe leaving a little bit more of the energetic, flighty modalities behind. In terms of being a shadow work coach, that really is descending into the subconscious self. The shadow is not bad in of itself. It's just the parts that we've rejected of ourselves because we've been shown that they wouldn't be accepted. Sometimes those are very good aspects of ourselves, right? Sometimes due to trauma and abuse, we had to hide certain gifts or certain things. And so for me, it is getting people to kind of identify where that personality construct is. Like, I'm a good person, like all these labels that we give to ourselves, and then we will press down or reject anything that runs counter to that label. Like, some people will have this notion or perceived belief about themselves, like, I don't deserve success, or I'm not worthy of success. So they'll press down in the shadow all those gifts and parts of them that would bring about success in their lives. So for me, it's really kind of getting people to kind of work within the subconscious self and gain greater awareness of the parts of themselves that they may be hiding.
Amazing. I love how quickly you can just spout that off. It shows that you really know your stuff. It's awesome, man.
Thank you. Been doing it for a while.
Yeah, awesome. So you mentioned the flightier aspects, and you're kind of making a transition. Can you talk a little bit more about what that really means?
So like shamanic healing is something, and shamanic healing is really entering into a transcendental state and really kind of entering into what you would consider these non-ordinary realities. And in a way, it's you're actually able to do some really profound work. For some people, it sounds a little woo-woo, but I've been involved in it. I think it's absolutely amazing. But at the same time, there's a price that comes with that, right? Like, you're not always necessarily in your body. You're kind of, exploring these transcendental states. Sometimes they can even be induced by things such as psychedelics. And so, it kind of pulls you out of yourself sometimes a little bit. It's a lot. And so while I do believe it has an absolutely important imperative place in healing, and I'm still a huge supporter of it, it's something that I just don't feel I can engage in. I'm just better off with the work I've done with my clients. Is I've just started to realize I'm much better off, and my presence is better felt just being fully here. And so I'm just going to kind of start to kind of leave that up to others to kind of fill in that role in the whole within the healing process.
Got it. So it sounds like you're intuitively feeling called to shift in a direction, basically.
Intuitively called to, and yeah, I mean, just for my own self, whatever. I love to get more into like men's coaching and focusing on men's work, whatever. I think that and more so than anything else, I think when men heal, they need a really grounded presence to really hold that space for them and really help dive into them. I don't think they need really, at least initially, like all this different types of energy work. I think men just need someone to validate their pain and to kind of let them know that it's okay to go into your emotional self and kind of work through these subconscious shadows, these parts of ourselves that men may consider weak, but are actually very important to explore. And so for that to happen, I really have to kind of be here.
Understood. Absolutely. And I think when we look around at society today, I think there is a growing need for that male healing, because I think the focus has been a lot on the healing of the feminine, which is wonderful and beautiful. But at the same time, I, in my own life, have experienced it. And I look around at a lot of the men in society, especially, I'm a bit younger in the men of my generation. I see a huge need for that solid grounding. And I'm curious what you think about that change in culture.
I think we have to normalize healing amongst men. I think that men believe that any type of healing makes them weak, or it's very stigmatized against men. Like I said, even in the self-help healing space, whatever, a lot of the information that's out there is geared towards women. And I don't want to, we can get into these talks about gender, but just geared towards the feminine. Okay. And so I don't really know if we know what healing within the masculine looks like. And so I think we have to really begin to explore that. And yeah, it's important because men are almost like 4 times more likely to commit suicide at this point. They have much higher rates of drug addiction, higher rates of narcissism, which actually I believe is a byproduct of not healing and is a prolonged trauma response. So I mean, it's for society on an overall societal level for us to become healthier. Men have to engage in a healing process and have to have resources and guidance themselves.
Right on. 100%, man. So I want to transition a little bit here because I know, I've seen a lot of your content on Instagram, which I love it, by the way. That's how I literally found you through a Reels video that I was like, dude, this guy's freaking awesome.
Thank you, man.
It was your video, actually, I think it might be your most popular one, when you are expressing an actual example of what it's like to get triggered in trauma and then take responsibility for it. It was the one with the dishes. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
That was like, wow, this is one of the best examples shown of the work I've been trying to teach people and trying to show them more about. And that was really cool. But I know you focus on other people a lot. So on this podcast, I want to get to know you a little bit better, if that's okay. And I want to learn more about your story, if you're cool with that.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Okay, awesome, man. So from what I've seen, you've mentioned a little bit in some of your videos that you've grown up in a really rough environment and that your parents have been rather traumatized, and that's been a huge journey for you. So, are you willing to share a little bit more about some of the real struggles you faced in your life and how that has shaped your journey into what you've become today?
Yeah, I went through, I recently shared this online, so I don't feel as weird kind of going into it. But, I went through child sexual abuse from a parent from a very young age, whatever, which is not something that is often discussed. Male child sexual abuse is not something we often discuss, and the impact and effects on that. Obviously, grew up in kind of like a narcissistic family structure. And so like a lot of gaslighting, emotional and psychological abuse. And people don't really realize, I think that's just as bad as the other forms of abuse I went through, because you're constantly questioning your reality. You're constantly questioning your thoughts. You're constantly questioning, is this really what is what I'm believing or what I'm feeling? Okay. Is this right? And so you become very disconnected from your own internal environment. So heavy history of trauma, went into big issues with addiction in my teenage, adolescent years, was a failing student all throughout. And then at one point in my early 20s, I actually became bedridden for 4 years. I was doing some traveling, working with an NGO, got very sick. The medical system left me behind. So I was bedridden for 4 years and had to figure out what was wrong with me kind of on my own. Found my way to like a Nigerian infectious disease doctor who found out I had like the second most deadly infectious disease in the world. Gave me some African plants to drink, and then I was good. So during those 4 years, it's been a journey, man. So during those 4 years, I read a lot. I kind of had to really ask myself what I'd want to do if I, was given a second chance. And my answer was, I'm gonna buy in. I'm gonna buy into all the things people always told me to do that would bring me happiness or whatever, right? I'm gonna kind of buy into the societal structures and systems and go for it. So I returned to college. I became a straight A student overnight. Got accepted into some of the top law programs in the country. Was really hell-bent on being like a high-end type lawyer, but doing good work with it. I want to go into child advocacy law, obviously. And then right around before I went to law school, I got, you know, a near full scholarship from a top law program. I had a spiritual awakening. It was really mind-bending, disorienting. And that's kind of when I ended up kind of into the spiritual sphere, working with different like spiritual healers, as you could call them. I went to law school. Things kind of ended up being a disaster. And I kind of felt very called and led to kind of step into not only my own self-healing, but then eventually showing up in a healing capacity for others, and built my own healing practice. And since then, just been kind of trying things out and continuing to learn and to continuing to explore that space with others, and really kind of understanding really what it is to heal on a mental, emotional, spiritual, physical level, and the modalities and techniques that kind of bring about that cohesion and harmony.
Awesome, man. So you mentioned that you had kind of a moment of your awakening. What was that shift for you when you know, because it's interesting. You kind of had that second lease on life. And most people, I think, when they, you know, share those kinds of stories, they almost go the opposite way, or they start doing things that society always told them they shouldn't do, or they always held in the back burner. But you kind of went the opposite. You're like, you know, I'm going to do all the things society is telling me to do, which is kind of really interesting. But then you had that spiritual awakening. It sounds like that was a huge divergence in your path. So what happened there?
So it was really interesting because it was like, for me, I always rebelled. Right? Like I always did the opposite of what people told me to do. So so awakening isn't going to like prolong, like, it's like, I already did that. Like I already. So the interesting thing for me was, so then I swung to the opposite direction, right? Just became the straight A student. And then for me, the disorienting thing was the awakening for me was like, oh shit, I'm going to curse. Oh shit. Like I had it right when I was 15, when I was fucking up, doing all that stupid shit and being shamed and told how bad I was. That little guy kind of had it figured out. And now I'm doing what everyone told me to do. And I knew this is going to be full of shit. And I was right. This is full of shit. I don't feel better. Like, yippee, I'm at a great law school. So for me, it was that awakening kind of gave me that shattering of like, you know, I kind of had to look at myself, like look at the ways I was still kind of fucked up. Look at the fact that like, the way that the incentive and reward system that society was giving me was not one that was really leading me to inner fulfillment. And so really kind of had to explore that. But like I said, I think I've had multiple awakenings, because as you've seen on Instagram, then I start kind of speaking out against the spiritual community itself too. Right. So for me, it's just kind of like, maybe I have some deep inner shadow I need to still explore, whatever, but I kind of go into these systems and structures and I'm like, wait, I don't like this. And we'll kind of, you know, shine a light on that. And I've just kind of been kind of weaving in my way in and out of different, you know, facets of society and exploring those things.
Yeah. Interesting, man. So yeah. You mentioned like you've had all kinds of awakenings, and that's natural. Like in the journey of life, this is about growth. We're not here to just figure out once and then we're good, right? It's total bullshit, anybody who acts like that. But I'm curious, I want to like dive into that moment for you, because, you know, I've got a really powerful story in my awakening that was totally unexpected. But I want to hear for you, like what happened for you? Was that just kind of like you were just sitting there and all of a sudden God came to you, or like, did you do a psychedelic, or like, what was your experience?
I had like some more repressed traumas come up, and I was working through that. And a lot of emotional purging was happening, a lot of like kind of fracturing of my perceived self and all that. But at the time I was very atheist. And then, you know, I remember I was like out on the balcony with my former partner, and I said, like, I don't know why, but I feel in this moment for some reason that something has been guiding this whole process in my life, this whole path. Like this hasn't been a me thing. This, like, you know, and she at the time was like, well, how does that make you feel? And I was like, I'm pissed. Like, I actually like the concept of feeling I'm in control. And around that time, then it just, I would start having what you would call like a lot of synchronicities, like a lot of coincidences that were happening over and over and over again, all within a very short time span that started to kind of transcend what even a statistical outlier would be. And, you know, and so I just, you know, I think of someone, they would call a second later, I would think I should be here. And everything just kept lining up again and again and again. And so it was a really shattering process of recognizing like, there are things kind of dictating my life and my environment that I can't necessarily perceive within my five senses or within this third dimensional environment. And so that was a difficult one for me.
God, and why was that difficult?
Because I said I like to think I was in control. I got so used to that this was all meaningless, that life was random chaos, right? And that I was in that, you know, that there was nothing outside of myself that I couldn't perceive kind of influencing my life, that I was influencing my life, and that's what it was, and whatever. And that's what I had lived under. That was the belief system I had lived under. So it was really just a shattering of the entire way that I perceived my reality.
Yeah, the kind of the nihilistic thing gets shattered when you can start to feel that sense of like connection and like a higher infinite kind of presence that's almost like a movie. It's kind of like unraveling itself. Very,
Yeah.
very trippy moment. I had a very similar thing in my life. I was incredibly atheistic as well myself, to the point where I would absolutely roast anybody that was spiritual or religious.
Me
I thought
too.
they were the
Me
dumbest
too.
followers
Yeah.
in the world. And I was so smart with my science. I knew everything, right? My science facts. And this really was strengthened after one of my turning points in my life. When I was 10 years old, and my older brother of 13 was actually electrocuted to death right in front of me on vacation, right? And that was one of my big traumas in my life, you know, paired with other things, you know, bullying and parents who struggle with mental health, gaslighting, all this stuff. But after that, I was like, you know, of course it's all random. Like, how could this have happened to me? Right. I was in that same kind of mindset. And then for me, right, I had that same moment where that shifted very, very quickly. But for me, it was a psychedelic experience, actually. That I literally, in a moment, I heard a message, and the message told me it's okay. 2 words. That was it. And I was on DMT, actually.
Oh,
First psychedelic I'd done.
DMT will always do that. Yeah, that'll blow you open.
Yeah. And I just was flooded with this euphoria of love. Every cell in my body was electric. It was pulsing. And it was the first time I could actually love and accept myself for that past decade, not being there with my brother. Right.
Yeah.
So I can totally relate to you, man. It's really powerful shit.
It really is, right? And psychedelics and plant medicine will absolutely blow that door open for anyone as well, right? And give them access to that kind of state of all-encompassing love and acceptance, right? And then suddenly everything makes sense in a weird way.
Yeah, it's crazy. And for you, what's kind of your background with plant medicine, psychedelics, and these types of things?
I am a big proponent of psilocybin mushrooms. It is something I microdose, and I will do, you know, kind of like we call it a journey, at least a couple times a year, but I give myself a lot of time and space to integrate what comes up. I've also done what's called a combo, which is, you know, secretion from an Amazonian frog. That's a real heavy purger.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. For myself, I've never really been personally called to DMT and ayahuasca just yet. It's something that I probably plan on doing in the future, but I was kind of entering some of these transcendental states without even plant medicine, just, you know, for whatever reason. And so I was a little fearful of like, all right, like my psyche's already fracturing a little bit. Like if I throw this shit on top, like, you know, am I going to be okay? Right. But I encourage, I am a big proponent of it as long as it's used with the right intentions and you form a relationship with the plant medicine and allow the experience to unfold itself rather than you putting your own egoic, you know, in like, I need this outcome. And so your plant medicine, you're going to give me this outcome rather than just taking it and allowing the process to unfold itself and give you what you need.
Got it. And do you have any specific experiences with psilocybin or with other substances that was the most transformative for you? You know, especially since these substances in trauma healing, I believe, go hand in hand when it's done intentionally. So I'm curious for you.
Yeah, man. You know, I had, you know, I don't want to even go too far. I've had two really crazy experiences. One was where like I dove into hell, whatever hell was. Like I went right in and was just experiencing like, I think really almost like the collective emotional pain. And it was horrible. And then like I almost saw myself swimming up out of this black tarry ocean, and like, you know, someone that was close to me or whatever, it was like they were almost holding out their hand and taking me out of the ocean. And then all of a sudden my heart ripped open and I felt like this all-encompassing love for a lot of people, in my life, and really kind of understanding the interconnectedness of me and some people, and like who we are and what we came here to do in a weird way. And so that was really transformative. Another one was a really, really deep shadow work journey. I just descended into the deepest parts of my subconscious mind. And when I got to the very bottom, I saw this like little 8-year-old like running around like crazy in like this basement, and like with his hands up in the air screaming like, "Mom and Dad never loved me. Mom and Dad never loved me." And like I went and like I hugged and like kind of embraced that part and like integrated it. And it was just this really, I mean, it kind of blew the doors open in terms of my perception of why I had been doing certain actions, and why I've been behaving certain ways, just knowing that this aspect was kind of running my behaviors from the subconscious without my full awareness, and really becoming aware that that part existed. And yeah, it was a big one.
Wow. I just got so many chills listening to that, man. And I don't say that just to fucking bullshit you either. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, I get the chills, man." But that's powerful, man. Especially, you know, those visions where you see that version of yourself. Like, wow.
Yeah, definitely.
And afterwards, like, what did you notice in terms of, you know, how you transformed and who you were from that experience?
Whew. I mean, you know, it's tough because it's mixed in with so much other inner work. Like even while I've been doing plant medicine, I've been working with coaches and really entrenching my own inner work. So it's a little bit hard to discern sometimes which is which. But you know, it's I would say I've been humbled a lot. You know, I've been very, very humbled a lot. Very much gained compassion for myself. Really recognize like the kind of fallibility in me. Like, okay, this is I thought I was doing this because I was in the right, and and no, wait, this part is really, I'm really doing this to push people away, right? This is part of me in the deep subconscious that is trying to push people away, because if my main caretakers didn't love me, then no one else is. And so, you know, I'm doing this out of a thing of, oh no, I'm pushing this person away because they did this, when actually no, it's a defense mechanism. So it's been more so like kind of slowly starting to allow people into my life, slowly starting to allow others in, recognizing other people who may be re-perpetuating certain parental wounds, right, and kind of saying I'm engaged in this friendship or relationship or dynamic because I'm just kind of calling in the same type of parental wound, and that's actually not healthy for me. Just having more conscious awareness around the relationship dynamics and the reasons why I do things, right, and that's been very helpful and beneficial to me since those experiences.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. It's like rather than fulfilling those toxic cycles just because maybe that's how we learned how to love from our parents or however, to be able to gain the awareness of what that really is. And that's an interesting lesson you learned as well, is like learning how to bring more people in, actually. Because, you know, I think in a self-help world, a very common lesson that they teach is about, you got to cut out people, right? You got to give up to go up. There's the kind of the 5 people you spend the most time around you become, which is very true. But at the same time, you know, it's interesting how sometimes if we just stop rejecting people but start being more open, how that can be a really powerful lesson of deeper love.
You know, and it's really been interesting because I do this and I love it. I would love to like continue to really dive down this hole honestly with you, because this is something that's been a really something I've really explored a lot, because I've been in the social media space for over a year and a half now. And I've had a lot of clients come in and be like, social media tells me I need to do this, and social media tells me to do this. And we get tons of messaging about how we're supposed to kind of exist in the space, and if what being healed looks like and all that. And I really bought into that notion of, I have to cut this person out. I need to only surround myself with the people that have the drive and ambition and with as me, right? And the greatest thing, the most curious thing about like my awakening was when I went through my awakening, I was told that like, as I go through, I'm just going to shed all the people from my past because they're no longer in alignment, and I'm ascending and this. And like, as I've kind of wound down my, you know, big awakening, I guess, I kind of found my way back to the people I always was with. And I don't give a fuck if they're not some super successful entrepreneur. I have friends that I'm reconnecting with that have been to jail. I don't give a shit. They're good fucking people, right? And oh my God, they haven't done the deep internal work. I don't give a shit. They're good people, and they were there, and they've been there with me from day one sometimes. And, there's this whole notion of awakening about just shedding and eschewing your past because your past is all trauma responses. And I don't like that. And so for me, it's been bringing back, a lot of people that I've always, been in connection with. Obviously the ones that I could feel were really toxic, that didn't want the best for me, right? Or were kind of using me or whatever. Like, yeah, no, I've shedded them. But I've had people from a young age that, yeah, maybe they didn't come up professionally or whatever in the same capacity that I have, right? Maybe they don't necessarily have the same drive and ambition that I may have in this moment, or whatever. But were they there for me, and did they care about me at a young age, and do they know the real me? Because in those young years, we kind of our authentic self before we kind of keep getting the programming. Yeah, so that's been something that through my healing journey as well, like it's kind of been a full circle. I've kind of just kind of come back to a lot of who I was even before the awakening happened, just kind of upgraded a little other aspects, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And that kind of reminds me of a similar journey I've been on. When I was getting really deep into the self-help world of like hustle grind and inner work as well, healing, I rejected my family a lot, and very specifically like my father and my stepmother. I like very much kind of demonized them because I had received a lot of traumatic energy from them because they've had their own rough lives, right? But there was a period when I like a couple of years, I just stopped talking to them. And I would just, whenever I would talk about them, it was in a negative light. And while I felt justified in my own, like, I'm righteous, I'm right, I'm the higher person or whatever. While that space helped me to heal, I also realized, and my girl, Mia, she really helped me to realize, like, hey, like, you probably got some work to do on that. And that's not like the healthiest way I'm hearing you talk about your family, whether you're right or wrong. I'm like, fuck, you're right. God damn it. And so I had to really face that. And how I kind of handled it is I just called them and was just like, hey, this is how I feel. And then actually led up to a huge blow up with my father and I was screaming at each other and like really intense. But then that led to an opening to where I actually had a really powerful release. Later that night, I was feeling horrible, and I didn't know what to do. And I just sat down on the couch and I'm like, fuck, I feel horrible. Fuck my life, da da da. And then I just let go. And then I just started releasing like crazy. And it was this demonic scream, like, just like coming all out. It was intense and it was powerful. But since I've been practicing this work, I just let it flow. And since doing that, I was able to a very grounded place, actually effortlessly reopen, especially the connection with my stepmom. Her name is Megan, and I really shut her out specifically. But since I had that release, I reached out to her and I opened up connection. And now we're sweet and loving and it's all good. You know what I mean? So just as an example of what that can look like for people to return to that cycle, just like you're saying. It's really important, I think.
Sometimes we just need to move out some old energy and start anew, right? And set the template that, like, can you be there? Can you appreciate this kind of new version of me? And if you can, right, then okay. And are you willing to kind of step up and release some of the old baggage as well? And can you step into like a person that's in a healthier for me? And if it's a yes, there's no reason why you got to keep cutting everyone loose, right?
So I think there's a really powerful point of discernment in that action, right? Discerning whether people are worth coming back to or not, just like you said. So for the people listening right now, how would you help guide them to find their own discernment and to know, do I hold on to Susie? Do I reconnect with Sarah, John? You know what I mean?
I think you got to be clear about how you want people to show up in your life. Like, what are the values or whatever that you want around you? And so for me, it's just, I wanted people who are authentic, right? I wanted people who could see into the real me, right? Like I said, I didn't need you to be some ultra super successful person on the same type of career trajectory as me. Okay. I just wanted someone who was real. And so for me, it was figuring out if that authenticity lied there, right? And, so, the people who kind of would like still check in on me here and there while I was going through my spiritual awakening and like kind of bouncing all over the place or whatever, right? That showed me something. And, and also at the same time, do I feel good in your energy, right? When I'm around you, do I feel drained after I go away? Right? Like my energy just got zapped, but I kind of feel filled up, right? And that became an easy thing for me. right? And sometimes some old stagnant like energy relative to past situations that did have to be moved out. But like, you know, if I came away feeling filled up, like my cup was filled up and your cup was filled up after our interactions, then like this is probably a go, right?
Right on. Yeah. Kind of you check in with your own cup to see where it's at based on your
Yeah.
feelings, basically.
Did I feel I was like accepted, right? Did I feel like this person really, really saw me, or were they kind of fawning me, right? Idealizing me, right? Do you know, like kind of differentiating the difference or whatever, right? I don't need a bunch of yes men, right? So I start to notice, you know, when people are getting real with me, I'm like, oh, it's like, you know, are you? But it's from a real authentic place, right? You know, they're checking me in a constructive way. So that was also something I look for too.
Yeah, and that's super important to have that. So I'm curious, like, what do you read off of me? What do you feel? What do you sense?
No, it's a dating show. No, I mean it's
Dating show, is that what you
yeah.
said?
No, I'm just messing
Contestant
with
number
you.
one.
Yeah, contestant number one. What did you feel? Yeah, no. No, man, I think you're real. I mean, it's part of the reason why I came on this podcast or whatever. I could tell you're an authentic dude, right? I could tell you were driven, right? I could tell that, you know, you had a message, you had your own realizations and everything that you kind of came to on your own. And that you're really trying to press forward that and leaning into that. So that's what's something, and I think you're confused too. I think you're, you know, still definitely just kind of figuring shit out and stumbling around a little bit, right? Which we all are. But like, yeah, it was kind of that, like, it seemed like you were tapped in to yourself and kind of a larger reality, and you were kind of pushing and moving forward with that. So I vibe with that. So yeah, I was like, okay, I'm definitely going to connect with this guy.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the honesty. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
it's layers and layers that I'm discovering within myself. But for me, what's been really huge is like kind of like following my bliss, if that makes sense. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I start like in every moment, any action, any thought I choose to have, if I start following what feels most internally like best, sometimes it always doesn't always feel good per se, but it's kind of like that flow of non-resistance. That's where I find that I'm living in my best truth and I feel the least confused. But I definitely have daily confusion on my path. So I'm no stranger to admit that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate
Yeah,
you saying that.
yeah, of course.
So the question I have for you, man, is, you know, as a trauma informed coach myself,
Mm-hmm.
a large portion of what I teach my clients is how to let go of their trauma and to heal their inner child. And during that journey, what I get most often is clients ask me like, okay, how do I release? Right? That's like the big question. How do I do the releasing, the letting go, the healing part? And I have my own ways of talking about that, but I also know that you have now shifted into running your healers program, which you are teaching coaches and healers how to teach their clients how to do this. It's kind of like the next level, I
Yeah.
guess you call it. So when people ask you like, okay, Zach, how do I let go? How do I do this? How do you explain it to them?
I mean, so everyone is unique, but this is a multifaceted healing approach, and this is why sometimes talk therapy can have limited effectiveness, right? It is a mental, emotional, physical process, and they're all intertwined together, right? So if the body has been wired to feel certain emotions are dangerous, right, then we have to work with the body to begin to wire the nervous system in a way that it feels comfortable and safe to allow certain emotional expressions in, right? Sometimes that is the practice of co-regulation and holding space, okay? We also have to de-shame certain things, right? Well, certain people will be like, oh, I'm so cowardly if I cry. And it's like, no. Where were you given that messaging? What was the event and experience in your life that you were given a message that this emotional expression was wrong? Okay. And kind of tracing back, you know, going into meditative techniques, checking in with doing body mindfulness, going to the subconscious, seeing what memories come up, right? And kind of having the adult self show up for the child self and be like, no, you know what? That thing where mom and dad may have been shutting us down the moment we had a thought or feeling they didn't like, that wasn't right. Right. And kind of having the mind body register that as well. Also kind of locating certain events where we got stuck in fight or flight response that couldn't be completed. Right. And then kind of allowing that process to complete itself as well. Right. So it's about regulating the nervous system, becoming consciously aware of the events that created that dysregulation within our internal self. And then someone possibly holding space for us where we seen, feel accepted, right, witnessed in this emotional expression. So then we're kind of rewiring the space of like, oh, it's dangerous to have this emotion. And now suddenly someone's been holding space and we're seeing it safe, right? So There's layers to this for sure.
Yeah, and what's really interesting too is like, it's one thing for you to go through that journey and intuitively tap into your own healing, but it's another thing to be able to describe that in a way which connects to people and, gets them results, you know?
Well, I mean, the big thing has always been is working with triggers, right? Like, and this is where I have to kind of rewire some certain programming that we've been given from society in terms of that discomfort and triggers are something to stay away from, right? Safe spaces, right?
Yeah.
But and obviously you don't want to be triggered to the point where you shut down or whatever, right? There's a balance in all this. But triggers show us like events from the past that haven't been completed, right? And so when we have these heightened emotional responses relative to the event at hand, that's an opportunity to kind of slow down, breathe in, and see why there's a heightened emotional reaction, right? What is creating this from the past that you're perceiving the past to be occurring in the present moment, right? And now we can set a template, we can hold a container for that residual emotion that never got to be felt through to kind of come through, be experienced and released.
Yeah, there's a lot of programming out there in terms of what is acceptable in order to be able to be felt or to be expressed. Like so often I hear people tell me, specifically clients when we're going deep, like, I was never allowed to feel angry. I was never allowed to feel sad. And when that's programmed in, good luck trying to heal. It's basically what you're saying until that's really addressed.
I mean, a big part of my healing process is learning how to work with rage, right? Because that was an emotion that was not allowed to be expressed or worked with at all, right? It was nearly killing me. It's depression is depressing. It's pressing something down, right? And oftentimes, right, we feel uncomfortable with rage, and that puts us into an immobilization state, right? This emotion's too scary to experience. I must shut down from it. So a lot of the ways that I've been healing people too is creating a container where we start to look at healthy outlets for anger to be expressed, right? And get the body comfortable feeling through anger. And, because people will people's mental minds will shut anger down. Like, no, they were great. They have their own trauma and everything. And that's great, right? And that's great that you have that mental understanding. But there is an internal response, a primal response that is asking to be felt through an experience. And we can hold a container for it to arise, for sensations to occur without necessarily lashing out. So really finding a way to kind of not suppress these emotions, not lash them out, but contain them, create resiliency within, create capacity within you. So these emotions can rise out, and then we can respond to it and have a concerted release that is focused and channeled effectively rather than just exploding everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the way I help people frame that as well, it's if you imagine, I think Zoom's cutting out a little bit here. If you imagine a pendulum, right? And on one end, you've got two extremes. On one side, we're resisting it, we're suppressing it, and be like, oh, no, it's nothing, no big deal. On the other side, we're resisting it by getting stuck in the story and dwelling on it and, lashing out, like you said. So then we got to come to the center here and just be directly with it with no extra, I guess, thoughts or conceptions, but just totally present with it. And through that almost like middle path, as you call it, that's when the release happens. And it's you kind of have to become aware of both of those tendencies. It's so common for people to, to push it away or to just stay stuck in the story. Right. And I'm sure for you, like another question I have for you is like, I'm sure when you're working with people to overcome these kinds of trauma, that a common thing is that they want to just kind of rant or vent and just stay stuck in the story.
Yep.
And sometimes that can get in the way of the actual release. So I'm curious, like, how do you handle that? How do you decipher?
I'll literally just like put my hand up, like, okay, we got the verbal ventilation out. Breathe. Take your conscious awareness internally. Feel into your body. What is arising as you speak? Connect to your body as you speak. Don't speak from your head. Speak from your gut. Speak from your chest, wherever the sensation is arising. Tell me, how do you feel in this moment as these words are being released? Well, I don't know. Okay, well, where's the sensation in your body? In my chest. Okay, what's that sensation like? I don't know. What's the shape of it? What's the color of it? Well, it's blue. Like, it's sad. It's making me sad. Okay, connect to that sadness now as you speak, rather than just going in circles in your head, right? It's connecting them to their internal body as they're dialoguing with me.
And how much of that process for you is like when it comes to helping people release and to have those experiences, how much awareness, or how to phrase this, like how much of it is their willingness and their free will to choose to go deeper and to release more versus the way that you're guiding them, if that makes sense?
It's a mixture of both. I mean, I can only go so far if there's not a willingness on their part, if the ego's blocking things too much or whatever, right? I mean, we really can't go that much deeper, right? If they're stuck in the ego construct and it's very firmly cemented, um, there's really not much I can do, right? And really, I mean, I'm just holding space. I'm holding space for their own internal exploration, right? And just kind of helping guide here and there. Um, but it does come down to a lot to the client. I mean, my role is really create safety and just give tools and resources, and then it's up to them really, right? And it's up to them to kind of like ask, well, I feel this. What is this? Okay, well, let's kind of explore that. Like, what do you feel that it could be tied to? Breathe deeply, like allow the memories to come up, right? So it's a mixture, honestly.
And when you mentioned tools and you talked about different ways you're exploring to help people release anger and rage, what specifically you're referring to?
It's also, I mean, you have like somatic experiencing practices. You have the practice of interoception, which is like kind of, you activating the felt sense and going internally. You have the access of the tool of like pendulation, which is alternating between an uncomfortable sensation and one that is pleasant within your internal environment and going back in between those spaces, right? Then you have those, kind of the parts work tools where you're kind of identifying when an inner child part might come up, which is, you tend to enter into black and white thinking, right? You tend to feel a hypervigilant response occur in your nervous system, right? So just kind of bringing awareness to that. And then, becoming more of like, where are those moments where you need to be a detached observer and where you need to embody this. So there's a lot of different things. And, I don't want to give away my whole program in the podcast. So, yes, it's kind of working with some of that stuff.
Yeah, do you want to briefly share about the program that you do, not giving it all away, but to let people know if that's something that is of interest to them?
Yeah, so I mean, it's been on a one-on-one container, and it's now going to move into a group container in the next couple of months. But it is just, it is like anywhere. And I'm still deciding how many sessions I want to extend it to. But it's like a 16-week type program where we are going over. I really feel all the different things and modalities that might be missing from both the self-help, spiritual field, and the mental health field as well. That's how I felt like I built up a healing practice. I was involved in both of those communities. I saw the missing holes, right? So that's when I kind of like, we do parts work. We go into what complex PTSD is. We go into what financial trauma is. We go into somatic experiencing, somatic release. We go into the natures of spiritual awakenings and what they create because, our different systems really don't have a very informed, process on that. You can kind of lose your mind for a little bit. What even going through a breakup will look like, right? That there's a huge physiological thing that occurs even in a separation, right? And so just we kind of just explore all these different modalities and some of these different theories, right? We explore what codependency, narcissism is, how they arise, how to even work with these type of things in certain therapeutic environments or coaching environments, so to speak. So yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with that program, and it's been going well so far, which is why I'm moving it from a one-on-one container to group work now.
Very good, man. Congratulations. Sounds like very holistic, very intense, but in a good way kind of program. Who would you say that kind of program is for? What type of person?
I mean, anyone who's a coach or therapist. I mean, I have licensed therapists in it right now. I have different coaches. I have different alternative health practitioners, and I have different people who are just looking at for the tools and resources to heal themselves and be able to hold space for their friends appropriately, right? Just anyone who just has a desire and willingness to be able to go kind of in deeper places within themselves.
Awesome. Very good. And for those who are interested, we're not wrapping up the interview just yet, but for those who are interested in like potentially talking to you about that or maybe joining, how would they best get in touch with you?
And just go on my Instagram, just go on ZA Energetics. There's a link in my bio to fill out an inquiry form, and you can just do it through there.
Okay, great. So I want to, one of the questions I had prepared for this interview that I think is very related to a lot of stuff you just shared is that really the core of what I teach in my program. I run one called the Anti-Anxiety Academy, specifically tailored towards people overcoming social anxiety. But the core of what I teach is about balancing the two worlds, or the two paradigms of self-help, as I like to call it, which you have the release work and the reprogramming work, and those being the two different types of camps. And I'm in the belief that if we have too much of either, then we're either too focused on our problems and creating more of them, or we're ignoring the deeper issues and living a surface level life.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what you think of that system and how that applies to the stuff in your world, and if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think the reprogramming kind of, I think they're very intertwined, and I think they have to keep going hand in hand, right? You release the emotion or whatever, and then you understanding why the underlying emotion existed, and then you reprogram kind of from that space or whatever. Now there's more capacity within your system because you just released that, right? If you try and reprogram a certain belief, but the emotions are still stuck in there, right? Then that reprogramming is not getting past the brainstem. Right. So I'm very much a bottoms up guy. Like I heal from the bottoms up. Like we start with the internal environment, we release, and then I feel like we can kind of reprogram in certain things. But at the same time, to even reprogram, you have to have disconfirming experiences in your external environment, right? Like self-healing does not happen in isolation. It happens in real time in your daily life, right? So if love has been scary, man, we better give you an experience or someone where the body begins to perceive love as safe, right? So, we love to think we can hyper control these things, and I can use NLP and just reprogram your entire mind. But it really, really happens in your external environment, slowly showing the body that, oh, I can experience this, and my body feels like it's insane danger, but holy shit, it's not right now, right?
Yeah, like letting go of the resistance to that love, for example, letting it in, but then also reinforcing that process, like this is okay. You're allowed to feel loved. It's actually good.
And noticing the parts that come up when love enters in that feel like it's not worthy, and then working with those parts. It's just, there's so many, this process is just very complex, right? There's a lot of different elements to it that we're all working with. It's
And
a little bit of a juggling act.
Do you feel like there's ever a point at which one can feel worthy at a identity based level where that is the baseline?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, but but then there's still going to be parts that come up from time to time where you're going to feel unworthy, right? You think that I always feel worthy? No, right? But do I feel a lot more real, actual internal self-worth than I used to? Yeah, I feel confident in saying that. I feel confident that that's more of a baseline now. But there's always going to be moments where we feel insecure and we feel unworthy. And in those moments, instead of being like, ah, shit, I'm so bad, get curious. We could just continue to get curious about why that is.
I gotta comment on this. It's so freaking beautiful. I don't know if it's the light coming in from your window, but it's like right on your camera, and you're just cloaked in this brilliant, like for the people that are watching on YouTube, you'll see it. This like brilliant cloak of like rainbow light. It's like in a psychedelic trip. It looks really, really dope.
Yeah, it's got some violet light shooting down on me, so that's nice.
That's beautiful. Yeah, it's like just this channel coming right down.
Yeah, just staying low.
It's freaking divine, man. That's awesome. So one of the things I most admire about you is your courage to really speak up against a lot of the, like we mentioned earlier, the BS in the spiritual community in a harsh yet honest way. I feel like it's very, very honest and very, very truthful as well. However, I imagine you get a lot of hate for expressing that, which anybody does who is a polarizing figure. So I'm curious for you, do you receive a lot of hate? How do you deal with that if you do? And what motivates you to keep speaking out on that?
It's interesting. I've had people that are actually kind of close to me who are just aren't supportive of the take I have, and they're well within their right to feel that. Ever they're feeling I'm being too harsh and I'm hurting people, and that's their opinion, and they're more than entitled to that, and I'm not saying it's wrong. But surprisingly, it's been incredibly well received. I'm actually been shocked about it's like 98% positive. I think everyone has been so scared to say anything because then they're considered low vibe or negative or this, and they have to suppress everything. So when there's a voice that is actually coming out and giving these thoughts and beliefs that everyone's been suppressing, it's now being put out there. Everyone's like, oh, I can breathe. Finally, someone said it. And so the majority of what I receive, actually, surprisingly, in the space is very positive, because I think we've all kind of experienced these things, and people are just feel validated now in what their experience is. They don't feel so alone in it.
Yeah. And how does that feel for you to hear that feedback?
It's good. I mean, I'm not doing it for the feedback. I mean, I do it because, like, and I know this may sound like bullshit, but I do it because, like, I just want to really speak my truth. I don't want to hold it in anymore, right? So kind of the guru complex is sometimes you can't really say how you feel with a certain teacher or something, right? And so you feel stuck, and so it's kind of like letting out some of that repressed energies for me, and just honoring my actual internal experience is actually healing for me. I mean, I think for me, like, I mean, this has been a very healing thing for myself. I utilize social media honestly in a lot of space for my own self-healing process, right? So learning to kind of channel my inner truth and really project it out there. And it just so happens that my truth tends to be so many other people's truths, and then we can kind of collect on that. So it does help to, I mean, if I was getting tons of hate, I mean, yeah, it would be affecting me for sure. But it is nice that I'm seeing that my experience is reflected, and I'm not crazy. Like, we're all feeling these things. We're all seeing these things.
Yeah. And I think when you embark on this journey, you kind of gain a certain ability to see trauma in other people when you work in this stuff. Like, you just look into their eyes and it's like you can't turn it off. It's like having night vision, right?
Yeah, of course.
Relate to that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Just trying to see if I can get the light off, but let's stay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, it's probably been a bit difficult for me or whatever, because, like, yeah, I mean, I'm a shadow work coach, so I can very clearly see into people's, like, repressed stuff, right? And so, and it comes to a point of finding that middle ground between where you're passing judgment and when you're like, no, I really see this in a person, right? But yeah, it has been something of, like, I can, some of these big names in these spheres, I can see what they're doing, and I can see, how you're kind of sometimes playing off of people's internalized repressed shame and putting yourself in a position where you're almost playing off their shame, right? Bringing it to the surface, and then putting yourself in position as you are the source and the only option available to remove that shame that you just brought up to the surface for them, right? And yeah, so there's a lot of, sometimes, a little bit of shadowy dynamics that go on, and I'm not been exempt from employing that at sometimes in my own career or whatever, which is why I had to go in and do my own shadow work and kind of bring some of these things to my conscious awareness. We're all human. We're all going to make mistakes. And that's the thing, whatever. I don't want people to feel like I'm, like, demonizing these people, whatever. It's more so just like, I use humor, and I'm just like, hey, these things are happening. Let's draw awareness to it, right? I'm bringing up the surface. What do you think? I caught out, like, a huge name in the space at one point, like, I think like a month and a half ago. And people don't realize it's not because I'm really against this person. It was like, hey, you know what? Like, I see a lot in you. Like, I see, like, I feel like you actually really know your shit, but I feel like sometimes you're kind of, like, going to maybe a little bit of shitty tactics, and, like, and I'm gonna call that out.
Do you feel comfortable sharing or not?
No. I don't want to go that far, whatever. But someone in the manifestation community, and so, and I got some hate for it. I got people that gave me feedback, like, you don't actually know how much this person's been helping me and stuff, and I'm like, oh, terrific, great, right? But some of the things that I can see, in a certain space, in terms of, in the social media space, and how you can play off of people's own, shame and things, right? I want to draw this awareness so we can have a conversation about it. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm right all the time. I get shit wrong all the time, but we're so afraid to have conflict. We're so afraid to have dialogue just around anything, like, to just disagree, right? And so that's been my thing, is I'm not going to hold that back. I'm going to bring uncomfortable things to the surface, right? That may be triggering for some, right? Or people may vehemently disagree with. And great, we can have a dialogue, and maybe I'll step back and be like, oh, I was wrong in that, right?
Yeah, and I think that's really important, to be able to admit that you're wrong, and it's something that I'm absolutely working on within myself. And I think the conversation that you just kind of brought up, I think it goes right into the topic of, how does one balance business, spirituality? like the classic thing, because that's something I'm struggling with within myself. For a while I was wanting to help everybody for free, but then I was, kind of broke and struggling, and that wasn't fun. But now I'm starting to charge money and I'm starting to get paid for it. I'm starting to really help people. But then I also, I'm always very careful to notice the parts of myself that want to get lost in any sort of greed or like material. And then, when you do that, you kind of lose the humanity and the real compassion. And, you can lose why you even got into the work to begin with. So I'm curious for you, where do you see maybe your own balance? Because there is no right answer. And I know this has been a journey you've been on. So I'm curious, like, how do you find balance within yourself? I'm curious to learn for myself and for others out there.
So like, yeah, it's been super interesting for me because like I'm not the belief of, don't charge for your services. My problem initially coming in here was, and so this can be an ego thing. Undercharging things can actually be from a very shadowy place, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to be look how good and spiritual I am because I'm undercharging. And then I was coming out of my services feeling dead because money is an energy or whatever. So it's really becoming intentional, like really becoming clear and having a lot of clarity on why you're charging what you do, what these people who've gained trust in you, right? Are you then funneling them into all these other different programs that they really don't need because they've gained trust in you and your spiritual connection, right? And and that's like, and that's where that starts to come in. Like, okay, well, you've already paid on this, so do you want to pay me on this now? Do you want to pay me on this now? I got this. And then you're just kind of feeding and just kind of money grabbing more and more and more because you have that built-in trust, maybe from a practitioner like Power Place, whatever, right? And so I think, you don't want, it's infeasible to tell people show up in this healing space and don't charge, right? But why are you charging what you do? And what is your intention? What is your intention for showing up in this space, right? From someone who came from narcissistic abuse, right? Like there's a piece of me that likes external validation, that runs off external validations. I'm not, I'm going to be completely transparent.
Yeah,
so right, yeah, it's a wired response in a way or whatever, right? And so, but every time I even put out a post, I'm checking in. Is this something that I'm just putting out there because I want to receive the likes, or is receiving likes just going to be a byproduct of me speaking out my truth? Is me showing up in a space where I really feel like I can help people in this moment, and I just happen to be, and then receiving money because I'm actually offering that type of value, that's just a byproduct? Or am I doing this because I just need this money right now? Right? It's really becoming clear around that. Am I taking these spiritual practices and just using them so I can get money? Or am I doing it so I can share this and the money is just a natural thing that's going to flow in and I can accept what I'm going to receive because of the quality of my work, and I'm not trying to just force my way to a certain financial outcome.
Got it. So it sounds like you really just are continually asking yourself those questions, continually challenging and checking in to see like, okay, how does this feel? Does this feel like that kind of that clingy, grabby money feeling or whatever that might be for you, versus feeling good and feeling like actual service?
Yeah. I remember I'll be completely transparent. I mean, there was a point where like, man, I was like short on money, and like I had a client and they were really good. And like, they asked me if they could practice on me in terms of like, some of the healing work they had done. And I said, sure. And they just wanted to practice on me. And then I just found myself teaching them as they were practicing me. I was like, oh yeah. And so this will be this amount of money. And she was like, wait, what? Why? I came here to practice on you. And I was like, and so I was forcing my own intention on a situation to get a financial outcome over someone that trusted me. I was acting insanely out of integrity.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's becoming aware of that type of stuff. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think there's some kind of programming, for somebody like you or I, I'm sure you've done some kind of sales training, like when you're learning, like, okay, how do I do that? Maybe haven't, but no, I personally have. And I think maybe you've learned from, I don't know. But there's like kind of, there's this programming of like, it's like trying to get from somebody. But when you genuinely are offering that value and you just give people an opportunity to invest, that people want to give you money, for you as a spiritual practitioner, because that's how they can commit to their own journey, right? And that's what you said, the value of, if you're undercharging for your services, you're doing people a disservice, and it's coming from a place of deep insecurity on your part, and you actually rob the client of the potential to really go super deep. Because if you're still operating from that place of insecurity, you're not in presence, right? You got your own baggage going on and you can't be there to the highest degree for them, you know? And I've really had to work through that myself. That's been a huge fucking journey. And I feel like now I'm finally getting to a place of peace around finances, around that side, where I am just getting out of the way of other people's journeys. And then, you know, then I don't have to feel so out of integrity of like I'm pushing people, because I'm guilty of it too. You know?
No, and I gotta be honest, I never took sales training sometimes, but like this is the thing, like I do have, and this is maybe my own issues, but I do have a problem with sometimes how some of the big names have showed up in this space. And you know, I went, you know, and this is even, I'm not even talking about the people I recently referenced in my last video. There's another one who went to like a certain webinar, and they're like, you know, when people say they don't have the money, they do have the money. You are fine, you have the press, and you know, I vehemently just disagree. I vehemently disagree. You know, my sales approach has been, I'm going to share with you all that I'm offering and all that I value, and then I'm just going to let you sit with it, right? I'm not gonna press on you. Like, listen, if you don't, you know, I'll be honest. Like, if I'm like, hey, listen, I only have a couple of spaces available, so you know, if there's something that feels right, but I'm not, you're gonna get a full body yes, and you need to, like, I really just, I place myself out there. This is an offer, and like, I feel like the people, they'll come in, right? I don't press, and I've been able to sleep a lot easier because I don't do that, right? And I feel like there's a lot of trust in there because I didn't press. Even if, you know, that other person needed that push or whatever, you know, let them get to that on their own, right? Because if you press, there is going to be some inner resentment when they do pay. That is going to affect, I think, the overall impact of the work. So I really just open up a container, just say, this is what I offer. I spew out my value. You know, I mean, I have a really, you know, I'm not going to share them, but I have a really like big name person in my program right now. And I remember we got on a call and we were just kind of talking as friends, and then they kind of asked, they're like, what is this? And I shared what I did. I was like, oh, this, and they're like, and then I could see their faces being like, oh yeah, that's kind of not for me, really. They were kind of giving that face, and I just you know, shut the fuck up. I was like, yeah, no, that's all right, like, cool, you know, and step back. I didn't press, like, listen, no, you don't. I just stepped back, right? And then shockingly, 2 weeks later, that person came to me like, hey, actually, you know, I've been sitting with it, and I looked more on your work, and I'm a go. I didn't press for that sale. I don't, and so I felt so much better about that, right? And I think you know, I never used a business coach, never used a sales coach, and have been doing pretty well. And I think it's because I have been doing the opposite of some of the things that have been espoused in this, right? And you know, I had to do more work around being confident in speaking about what I'm speaking about. But that's it. I just kind of let it just come.
Yeah, that's really good to hear, man. You know, it sounds like you had a bit of awakening in that moment when they came back. You're like, oh shit, if I really just kind of sit back, like people will come. You know, you kind of creating that space for a, you know, law of attraction type of, you know, situation. You know, obviously that's an overused term, but
That's true. There is law of attraction, it's just how we're utilizing it, right? And it's a little more complex than we think.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, kind of when you said, yeah, man, I can sleep a lot easier, that really hit me, because that's what I've been finding very, very recently, just really these past few weeks of my life. It's very recent stuff for me. And it's like, wow, it's so nice to have that, to be kind of free of that burden of needing to convince people to sign up. You know, and I think if there's anybody who's listening to this now who is either a new coach or a coach who's, you know, because I know there's a lot of coaches out there who want to help, but they're struggling with this, you know, that whole side of it, to realize that, like, what I've realized is you are most effective when you are just having sales tactics or follow a script or do all these things, but really just like understanding people's problems and like what they're going through, and being present with that. Because honestly, that seems to be the rarity in the market, I guess. And that's been a hard lesson for me to learn, but wow, is that fucking freeing. Big time.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you sharing that as well. It's, you know, it's even validating for me right now in my journey.
Yeah, appreciate that, man.
It's powerful stuff. So another question I have for you, and I think you'll like this one, is what about who you are do you feel like people most misunderstand? And what would you tell those people?
Oh, this is going. You're gonna have to give me a second with this one. And maybe people understand. I'm figuring it out. Like I'm really just a dude figuring it out. I'm really just a dude figuring out with his own emotional pain, with his own, pile of shit still stuck in him. Um, you know, and I mean, I can show up a certain way in healing spaces and in public, but you know, you were to see me on a day-to-day life, man, I get social anxiety, right? I get insecure still, right? Um, I am very, very human and very fallible. Um, and the what has allowed me to be good at my job is, in my belief, is that I make mistake after mistake after mistake. I fuck up all the time. But I think my whole thing is, it was let me be good. I will turn back and see, okay, how did I fuck up, and kind of and lean into that and own up to it, right? So yeah, I think that's people misunderstand me. My gift is, I think, allowing myself to make so many mistakes, and being able to sit with that and be okay with it.
Cool. And another question, as an individual, what do you feel like is the most powerful thing you can do or gift you can give to somebody, to another person?
Can you repeat that? You just broke up for 1 second. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, as an individual, what do you think is the most powerful gift or thing you can do for somebody, for another human?
Hold space. Hold space. Don't give them fucking advice. Don't tell them what to do. Right? Hold space and allow them to be heard, and then put yourself in their shoes. Try to understand it from their perspective. Anyone wants is to be seen. Is to be seen and understood. That's what we're all craving for, right? Almost all conflicts in relationship are due to the incapacity each person to see the other one, right? And so I think that's the greatest gift that you can give anyone, is to just put yourself in their shoes and really understand it from their level and why they're going through what they're going, and to relate that to them, right? The world would be a little much healthier place if we could all step into that.
Very nice, man. Good answer. And for you, Zach, as a human being, right, as another fellow comrade, when you're not focusing on healing work and this kind of thing, how do you spend your time? Do you have
You
hobbies,
know, yeah,
pastimes?
yeah, yeah. I love the gym. Love listen to music. Big fan of rap. Just gonna be honest. Um, I still binge shows. When I find a really good show that like really speaks to me, right, and explores all these different concepts, or whatever. I'll spend my time being with that. I've got a close circle, I feel like, at this point, of people, right, and kind of checking in and being with them on that. So that's where I'm at. Even the show I'm watching right now, I'm watching The Punisher. If you're
The superhero
aware.
one, right?
Yeah, but he's not a. But it's really weird. He's not a superhero, honestly. I mean, we know him as a superhero. He's just a dude that just is a really good fucking soldier. And just kind of, it's a show all about kind of, really honestly about the corruption within Middle Eastern affairs. And so, a lot of these shows like use superheroes as a vehicle to actually really explore some really serious, intricate concepts. So when a lot of details come into that, I love exploring that. And so yeah, and so here's a great thing for me, man, is I'm still trying to figure out who I am outside the healing sphere, right? I showed up one way before my awakening, and then I went through this whole spiritual awakening, the spiritual community, where they're saying, no, you're not actually this. You don't like rap music. That's a trauma response. You're listening to low vibratory music and da 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 and all that stuff. And slowly I've been swinging back, and I've been like, oh, wait, yo, I just do like fucking football. Like, I do like rap music. Right. And so for me, outside the heal, I got very identified with being like a healer, or being in a self-help space. And so for me right now, it's kind of putting the rest of my life, piecing it back together and really understanding, like, oh, you know what? Okay, the spiritual community and mentors told me, no, I actually don't like this, but you know what? Let me really step into that. What do I like? And really kind of, finding that over time.
Yeah. And there's something powerful about being able to let go of the shame around that too.
I mean, yeah, I think it's stupid that there even is shame in the first place or whatever. I think hip hop music is beautiful, right? You know, I mean, I think football is beautiful, right? I think the fact that, you know, just because, you know, there really should be no shame in it, right? I mean, you know, you have certain communities who have their own belief systems and they put that on you, and it's like, you know, allow the person to figure it out themselves, right?
Yeah, but and yeah, totally. Because it's like, I think there's a lot of people too who can relate to what you're saying here. So I appreciate you sharing that, because
Yeah.
they have these things, like they do want to watch shows and do Netflix and have these, you know, other things that are like maybe like guilty habits or whatever. But when you can let go of that being wrong and just let yourself find that joy, I think there's actually healing within that process of binging sometimes, right? And just watching shit on the internet, and, you know, not having to be productive 24/7 and working on yourself 24/7. And I think a lot of those influencers that, you know, you talk about, um they fake that shit. They act like they're hustling, grinding all the time, and they're really not. Or the ones that kind of are, if you really pay attention to them, like, they look fucking drained, they look tired as shit, and they don't look really that fulfilled, in my opinion. You know, you got to
Nah,
have that ability to let go and to fucking relax, man. You know?
yo, if you like playing Halo, go for it, right? I mean, it's you know, and I'm sorry, but like the hustle grind mentality, as someone who's from New York and kind of was embedded in that, like that shit. You want to talk about what's a trauma response? The hustle and grind mentality is a trauma response, right? I always got to be doing something. My value and worth rest outside myself, and I always got to be manifesting and achieving and excelling and putting an effort. Like, sit your ass down, right? Just sit your ass down for a little bit, right? Rest, like, you know. And so it's you know, you see me smoking a jewel right now, whatever, you know. And as an energy healer for a little while, I couldn't do that, but like, you know, I was like, you know what? Sometimes I am stressed. I don't feel like taking myself through a million fucking somatic exercises to regulate my nervous system. Sometimes just puffing on this damn thing does the job. And I hope to get to a space soon, even as a practitioner, where I'm regulated enough where I don't gotta do this. But you know what? I'm human, right? I think that's the thing. Like, I am human, right? When the Phoenix Suns lost in the NBA Finals, I got fucked up because I was sad about that, right? Like, you know what? It's okay. All right.
Yeah, man. Preach it, brother. Preach it.
Yeah.
Preach it, man. Yeah. And I'll have to join in there too and say, like, I binge eat sometimes. I eat, you know, food, microwavable shit. Like, it's not always the best. I watch sometimes hours of YouTube watching like gaming videos and stuff. Like, that's
Yeah.
my thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed of it. It's part of who I am. And
Yeah.
while I still spend time working on myself, you can't do that all the time. You got to balance it, man. You know?
No, and if you're working, if all you're doing is working on yourself, what type of fucking life is that? Like, that's I mean, that sounds like a really shitty experience, right? Like I said, it's all about balance, because like I said, you're always working on yourself. You're giving yourself the implicit message. There's always something wrong with you. Like,
Yes,
just,
exactly.
yeah. You're never going to be perfect, right? Just, you know, step in, right? Understand when toxic shit comes up, do your best to work within it, and go live your fucking life, right? And you'll be happy.
Fuck yeah, man. Yeah, and just, you know, don't be so hard on yourself. So many people are just so damn hard on themselves, whether
Yeah.
they're doing well or they're not. And I think there's a huge potential for us to just be just a little bit more gentle. Just be gentle with yourself, you know, like, you're doing the best that you can, right?
Yeah, and stay off the fucking Instagram self-help profiles. All right, because, and, you know, this comes from someone who literally fucking has one. But like, all they do is like, here's all the ways you're messed up. Here's all the ways you're a narcissist. Here's all the way that you don't love yourself, and da da da. And all they tell you, like, and it's just like, you know, just go be happy, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that goes right to the balance between the, you know, the releasing and healing versus just the reprogramming, which is, you know, reprogramming doesn't have to be this like deep practice thing. It can literally just be focusing on laughing and having a good time with friends, be focusing on cracking a funny joke, or focusing on just be like, you know, look outside, look at a tree and be like, oh, that tree is looking really cool looking. Right?
Yeah.
You have to be
Yeah.
like, oh, right, fucking whatever.
Yeah, not everything has to be a deep, like transcendental fucking experience or whatever. Like you can just live your damn life and just take the nuggets in the small moments, right?
And sometimes when I feel most enlightened is when I say the dumbest shit.
Yeah.
You know? And
Yeah.
I'm just with friends and I just crack some ridiculous ass joke that maybe only even makes sense to me. And that's when I feel like I'm really living.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for sure, man. It's those small moments where you just let loose, right? And you just can allow yourself to just be stupid.
Right on. So I think the last question I had written in here for you was, and we can wrap here if you'd like, is if you could implant one belief or one like thought into the mind of everybody right now, like just inject it like the virus, what would it be and why?
You're all right.
You're all right.
So, you're all right. You're all right. If you want to work on yourself because you feel you can go deeper or whatever, great. Okay. You know, but like it's not because you're bad or you're toxic or whatever. You're all right. And you're trying your best. Well, not everyone is. Not some people are really fucking up. But like, you know, you're just all right. Okay. And I think if you work from that baseline, you come from a little bit less place of shame and you can just kind of, you know, you can let your true self forward a lot more than just acting out of a continuous shame response. Because I think the way our consumerist capitalist society works, whatever. Not saying I'm like opposed to capitalism or anything, but you know, the more shame they're able to embed in with us, right? The more that we feel we need to purchase or buy something outside of us to be okay, right? So we're given a lot of programmings that are meant for us to feel unworthy and shame. And so I'd love to kind of deprogram that out of people. Mm-hmm. You're enough, right?
You are all right, man.
Mm-hmm.
You are enough. Wonderful. Well, man, was there anything else that you wanted to share before we wrap up here today?
No, man, this has been fun. I've enjoyed this. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your mind and your wisdom. I've learned a lot, and I hope the people that end up watching this could learn a lot too. I think you're kind of pioneering the space in ways that I think people really need. So I really appreciate the work that you do, and I appreciate, you know, getting to meet you and to talk to you further, man. Really, you know, I'm honored. Thank you.
Yeah, I think probably the most, you know, enlightening, awakening moment is like considering a pioneer in the space, because I literally just say, you're human. like that has become a transformational realization, right? That's how far off we've gone, where I'm just like, yo, does anyone realize that we're just all humans? And everyone's like, oh, fuck, someone said it, right?
Oh, man.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, yeah, no, but thank you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Oliver. I appreciate you.